Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this episode 3897 BN. Today's date is May 4th, 2026, and the title of the episode is Deep State and Iran Trap. Trump is breaking their will. Is Trump using the Save America Act as an election trap? Now, here's what your financial advisors won't tell you. By the time the news tells you to buy gold, it's too late. You're waiting. I get it. Everybody's waiting. Waiting to see if the ceasefire holds, waiting to see if the Strait of Hormuz reopens, waiting to see what happens next. But gold isn't waiting for you. It moves on fear, on instability, on the unknown, and it moves faster than you can react. So while you're waiting for certainty, the rest of the world is planning for what comes next. You can wait or you can prepare. You can't do both. Remember, the best time to put on a seatbelt is before the accident, not after. If you're ready to act, reach out to Noble Gold Investments. They help Americans protect their savings with physical gold and silver shipped to your door or held in a tax-advantage IRA. No taxes, no penalties to roll over a 401k or existing IRA. Visit X22Gold.com for your free investor kit. 5 minutes today could protect decades of seconds. That is X22Gold.com. Don't be the one still waiting, or just click the link in the description. And remember, past performance may not be indicative of future results. Investing in precious metals involves risk. Consult your financial advisor before making investment decisions. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, big tech fake news, the puppet masters, it seems that Trump now is trapping the deep state and Iran all at the same exact time. And think about what Trump is doing right now. He has all the leverage out in Iran, and he's breaking their will. Now, he knew from the very, very beginning that they were going to try to stop him as he's escorting ships into the Strait of Hormuz. And again, there is no war. Trump says the mission is complete, and now he is sitting outside, not firing on Iran because, again, the mission is complete, and he is basically providing escorts for ships. Now, of course, he knows that the deep state, the central bankers, Iran, what are they going to do? Well, they're going to attack, which means he has the right as commander-in-chief to defend, which means he can use the weapons at his leisure. And this is what they have done. They started to attack. Now, this doesn't mean Trump is going to come out and blow up Iran. He's going to hit each one of their small little ships one by one, just like he did with Venezuela. Actually, that gave them the training ground and showed the world, look what we can do. These fast boats, they're no match for the U.S. Iran has pretty much the same type of fast boats, probably not as fast. Can Trump hit them one by one without them even knowing it? Absolutely. Plus, think about what else Trump has done. Since Trump says to Congress, the mission is complete, I don't need the War Powers Act, he's just waiting for Iran to make the move, just waiting for the deep state to make the move. Because once again, he's allowed as commander-in-chief to defend the country. Plus, he's watching the deep state, Iran, watching them very closely from satellites to see where their missiles are, the rest of their drones are, where they're moving them from and to, where are they launching them from. He's watching the entire thing from the sky, which means in the end, if they try anything, if they try to hit a U.S. ship, Trump has the authority to go after them. In the end, the amount of pressure that is on the deep state, on the central bank, on Iran is enormous. Trump is going to break their will. That is the end goal here right now. And you could see it is working because, again, what does a wild animal do when they're cornered? They keep attacking until they have nothing left. They keep swinging and swinging and swinging. They get more and more tired. And by the end, they have nothing. In the end, Trump was just sitting back, full Navy, full Air Force, full armament, full control, and pretty much he'll have all the leverage in the end. That is what we're watching play out. And yes, the deep state, they'll try to do certain things, like they flew a drone into United Arab Emirates because, again, the UAE mentioned that they're no longer part of OPEC. They really don't need the Strait of Hormuz. So isn't it interesting that's the country they attacked? To maintain control, to maintain fear. Because remember, fear controls the price around the globe. So when Trump says we're going to escort ships, we're going to protect them, he's removing the fear. What do? They are pushing the fear back. So that should tell you everything you need to know right there. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is that we know that Trump, he wants the Save America Act passed. And he knows that this is going to assist the Patriots in winning the election. Now, the question is, does he want to do this way ahead of time, or is he waiting for the right moment to have this passed? And maybe Thune is actually working with him. Actually, if you notice, he doesn't say too many bad things about Thune. Just like the Speaker of the House, Johnson, he's completely and utterly on Trump's side. What happens if Thune was instructed not to pass the Save America Act? What happens if they were instructed not to confirm his people just yet? Because remember, we have the second phase of the plan coming up once we win the House and Senate. And I think without going through all of this and having the D's push back and the other rhinos push back, what happens if he wants to wait until he has full control of the House and Senate? And this way, everyone can be put into place very, very quickly. And with the Save America Act, why would you want to pass it too soon? Why would you give the deep state players time to counter it? Why not wait till the last moment, pass the Save America Act? And remember, there are certain things in there that can't be done right away. But have it passed, have it put in a law, then expose the election rigging right before the midterms, and then Trump say, well, it is a national security issue. I know we have the Save America Act. It is law. And I'm going to have to write up an executive order because a lot of the things in the Save America Act can't be implemented right now. So what we got to do is we need to make sure that everyone just votes with a voter ID, one-day voting, paper ballots. That is it. What happens if he's actually trapping the deep state players in all this, making it so they can't counter the Save America Act? Starting to seem that way. We'll be talking a lot more about all of this a little bit later. But first, let's talk about what happened out in California with the fires, because we can see that there was a certain individual that actually ignited the Palisades fire that killed 12 people and burned down 7,000 homes. His name is Jonathan Rinderknecht. So this is very, very interesting because this individual is a diehard leftist fixated on restorative justice and Luigi Mangione. So basically, he's a leftist, and he decided to destroy people's homes. Absolutely unbelievable. And once again, it's leftist violence. It is an epidemic. And that is what we're seeing across the country right now. Remember, they use the SPLC to hide the fact that the left are the violent people. And they try to mask it by saying, oh, it's the right wing. It's the right people. They're the ones who are the problem. This is what they did. They tried to keep the illusion alive, but it's all failing. Just like they tried to convince everyone when Doge was set up, where it was centralized. Now it's decentralized with all the different agencies, but go back a little bit in time. When it was centralized, remember, there were whistleblowers out there. Back in April of 2025, NPR published a widely circulated report built around a single whistleblower, Daniel Baroulis, an NLRB IT staffer. Baroulis claimed Doge operatives had broken into internal systems, disabled security monitoring tools, and potentially moved sensitive labor data out the door. The story landed hard. Democrats demanded investigation. Congressional letters flew all over the place. Other outlets recirculated all this. The narrative was repeated over and over and over to make you believe it was true. And guess what? It was all made up, just like everything else they do. You see, this is how they promote a lie. This is how they push these stories. The media picks it up. The whistleblower comes out. They regurgitate it. The D's mention it. They have congressional hearings, and it just goes around and around. It's a wrap-up smear thing. So Congress's own watchdog, just released a report with a finding that deserves far more attention than it's received. They found that the Doge team members did not access anything. There was no access. None of it appears to have happened. There was no evidence that Doge team staff accessed any of these systems between April 16, 2025 and July 25th, 2025. The staffers never picked up their government-issued laptops, never activated their credentials, never logged in, not once. Auditors pulled the sign-in logs and found zero activity across the entire period. When the agreements expired, the accounts were quietly disabled. So basically, it was all made up, just like everything else they do. But of course, they spread it around the fake news. They keep repeating it, making you believe that it's happening when it really isn't, just like everything they do with the Trump administration. And now this story is completely and utterly falling apart. And you know what else is falling apart? The Chinese economy, the push to shift everything from Europe into China and to actually spread the Green New hoax across the world. Who's spreading that? Well, we know it's the World Economic Forum in line with China. And what's very interesting is that the EU now, they have blocked funds for key Chinese solar energy parts from November 1st, citing security concerns, as imported inverters could be used to manipulate energy networks and gain unauthorized access to operational data, which could lead to countrywide blackouts. You mean complete and utter control by China, by the central bank, by the deep state system? Remember, the World Economic Forum, they came out and they told you, hey, we love China's system. We love their entire system, keeping control of the people, seeing who's on the web, censoring, the ability to shut down certain things. They love that. That's what they wanted for the entire world. But now that is completely and utterly falling apart. And you can see that there are certain infiltrators within our government that have been working with foreign countries. Yes, we have individuals that assisted the Maduro regime. We have certain individuals that are assisting the Iranian regime. We have certain individuals that are assisting China, you name it. And what's very interesting is the federal prosecutors in Miami, they announced that a former U.S. congressman and lobbyist was convicted of secretly acting as an unregistered agent for Venezuela while allegedly using political connections and millions in foreign cash to influence U.S. policy behind closed doors. So basically, this is Congressman David Riviera and political consultant Esther Neufer. They were found guilty after a federal grand jury concluded they covertly lobbied on behalf of the Venezuela regime without registering under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. Now, you think it's just them? You think it's just these individuals with Maduro, or do you think there's many more? Or do you think there's other individuals that have been working with the Iranian regime and many others working with other foreign countries? I think we're going to start to see this, and we're going to start to see all this come out now. And again, what is Trump and team doing? They're basically dismantling the entire deep state system and the hold that they had. Yes, the deep state players within our country, they're working with foreign entities. They always have. And you could see the supposed allies, which they are not, they are now panicking because they're realizing that they have no control over the United States anymore. They used to. They used to work with the deep state players within the United States, but now they see that they do not have any control whatsoever, and they're not calling the shots. Trump is. And Starmer came out and said that some of the alliances that we have come to rely on are not in the place we would want them to be, with more tension than desired, and it's time for European countries to face up to this together. Meaning, hey, we don't have control of the U.S. They're not following what we want to do. Trump is doing his own thing. He's actually exposing us. And now we're going to have to figure out what to do. We got to stick together right now because it's us against the U.S. That's pretty much what he's saying right now. And it's becoming clearer and clearer every single day. So everything that they had into place is falling apart right now. And you can see that Germany, they're having a difficult time. Remember, 6 days ago, Merz criticized the U.S. approach to Iran. 3 days ago, he says that Iran was humiliating the U.S. Now he says the United States is and will remain Germany's most important partner in the North Atlantic Alliance. We share a common goal. Iran must not be allowed to acquire nuclear weapons. Why the change? Well, think about what Trump just did. He placed additional tariffs on the EU, which puts a lot of pressure on Germany. Germany is like one of their biggest manufacturers. And this is going to be a big, big problem for Germany. Isn't it interesting just over a couple of days how all of a sudden everything changes? And Trump uses tariff to keep these people in line right now. This is the pressure that he can use on the deep state players. Remember, they're panicking over this because, again, Trump is not abiding by the World Trade Organization, abiding by the central bank rules anymore. He's breaking free from all of this, and he is calling the shots, just like he's calling the shots out in Iran. Now, Iran, they released a map highlighting the new area of the Hormuz Strait that they claim is now controlled by their armed forces. Translation. Yeah, if you come into this area, we're going to try to do something to you, which means they can't do anything, which means they are going to be blown out of the water if they try to do anything. And we're already seeing it happen. Their stupid little speedboats are no match for the U.S. Navy. They're blown out of the water just like the speedboats from Venezuela. There is no difference whatsoever. They don't even know what hit them. So they have no Navy. They have no Air Force. They have no weapons. They have nothing. Maybe they have a couple drones, a couple little missiles left, but nothing that is going to threaten the United States Navy. And Trump has all the leverage. Now, what's very interesting, they did fly a drone into the UAE and they hit their oil pipeline, one of their terminals where they receive the oil, which is very, very interesting. Now, of course, the deep state, the central bankers, they did this on purpose. Why did they do it on purpose? Why did they hit the UAE? Because they left OPEC and they don't need the Strait of Hormuz and they don't want the oil to flow. You see, you have to remember, they had control of the energy for a very long time. That's what set up the entire system. Now Trump is decentralizing it and they're trying to stop this. So Iran reportedly attacked the Fujairah oil terminal. This is the endpoint of the ADCOP pipeline, the UAE's only Hormuz bypass, 1.5 million barrels per day of crude capacity, expandable to 1.8 million. This pipeline was built specifically so the UAE could export oil without transiting the Strait of Hormuz. So basically, it goes from within the Strait of Hormuz to the opening of the Strait of Hormuz, and the oil pipeline runs across the UAE. So this way, they don't have to bring in ships there. The ships can then come before the Strait of Hormuz, which is pretty darn cool. And think about what the central bank or the deep state players, think about what they told the Iran proxies to do, or maybe the deep state players just did it on their own. They went ahead and they tried to shut this down because they want everyone dependent on what? The Strait of Hormuz. Now, what's very interesting is that Iran put out a video showing missiles being fired. Now, again, was this an old clip that they saved and they use right now? Or is this a couple of missiles that they're using right now? And if that's the case, then what do you think Trump and the administration are doing right now? They're tracking everything by satellite, watching where the missiles originated from, where they're being moved to, and where they're being launched from. But they made the claim that they hit U.S. warships with 2 missiles. Now, all they did in the video showed missiles take off. They didn't show missiles hitting the U.S. ships. So that's pure propaganda right there. So U.S. Central Command said, Iranian state media claims that Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps hit a U.S. warship with 2 missiles. Truth, no U.S. Navy ship has been struck. U.S. forces are supporting Project Freedom and enforcing the naval blockade on Iranian ports. So basically, what is Project Freedom? Well, Trump explains. Countries from all over the world, almost all of which are not involved in the Middle Eastern dispute going on so visibly and violently for all to see, have asked the United States if we could help free up their ships, which are locked up in the Strait of Hormuz on something which they have absolutely nothing to do with. They are merely neutral and innocent bystanders. For the good of Iran, the Middle East, and the United States, we have told these countries that we will guide their ships safely out of these restricted waterways so they can freely and ably get on with their business. Again, these are ships from areas of the world that are not in any way involved with that which is currently taking place in the Middle East. I have told my representatives to inform them that we will use best efforts to get their ships and crews safely out of the strait. In all cases, they said they will not be returning until the area becomes safe for navigation and everything else. This process, Project Freedom, will begin Monday morning, Middle East time. I am fully aware that my representatives are having very positive discussions with the country of Iran, that these discussions could lead to something very positive for all. The ship movement is merely meant to free up people, companies, and countries that have done absolutely nothing wrong. They are victims of circumstance. This is a humanitarian gesture on behalf of the United States, Middle Eastern countries, but in particular the country of Iran. Many of these ships are running low on food and everything else necessary for a large-scale cruise to stay on board in a healthy and sanitary manner. I think it would go a long way in showing goodwill on behalf of all those who have been fighting so strenuously over the last number of months. If, in any way, this humanitarian process is interfered with, that interference will unfortunately have to be dealt with forcefully. Thank you for your attention to this matter. President DJT. So let's see. Trump makes the announcement that the U.S. will escort ships out of the strait, removing the fear. The UAE is leaving OPEC, and Iran launched a drone and hit the oil facility. So let's see. Trump removed the fear. They put the fear back. So basically, fear controls the price. So basically, that just proves the deep state central bank system. It's not supply and demand, it's fear. It's always been fear. And this is what Trump is removing. So CENTCOM confirms that the U.S. military support to Project Freedom will include guided missile destroyers, over 100 land and sea-based aircraft, multi-domain unmanned platforms, and 15,000 service members. And it looks like the U.S. Navy guided missile destroyers, and they're currently operating in the Arabian Gulf after transiting the Strait of Hormuz in support of Project Freedom. American forces are actively assisting efforts to restore transit for commercial shipping. As a first step, 2 U.S. flag merchant vessels have successfully transited through the Strait of Hormuz and are safely headed on their journey. Now, think about what is happening right now. Trump has told Congress that the mission has ended. We are not going to bomb Iran right now. He doesn't need approval from Congress. Then he made the announcement that we're going to escort ships out of the strait. Now, think about this. In order to deal with the uniparty Congress that is always seeking to disrupt his policies and frame processes against his office, Trump recently notified the House and Senate the hostilities against Iran had ended and negotiations were underway. In doing so, Trump changed the dynamic, and the Iranian regime now views Trump as legally less empowered to trigger military strikes against the regime. To counteract that issue, Trump either needs Congress to authorize further military action against Iran or a triggering action that would justify such renewed strikes. Think about that for a second. Chris Rollins explains, this is a savvy legal move by Trump. May 1st, War Powers letter formally ends hostilities, preserves force posture, asserts Article 2 constitutional authority. May 3rd, Project Freedom announced as a humanitarian operation, not military. Monday, U.S. Navy escorts neutral commercial ships through the Hormuz under freedom of navigation rights. If Iran fires on it, that is Iran starting a new conflict. Trump is responding defensively, not attacking. No new war powers clock starts because the U.S. did not initiate hostilities. Iran did. So is there a historical precedent to support this? Yes. Presidents from both parties have launched defensive or limited response to attacks. Example, tanker escorts in the 80s, Iran-Iraq war. Now, you know what's interesting? A bombshell study just revealed that GLP-1 drugs don't actually work the same for everyone. Your genes determine whether the injections work at all and whether you'll suffer the side effects. At nearly $1,000 a month, that's a brutal gamble millions of Americans are unknowingly taking. This is why I'm obsessed with GLP-1 Elevate. Instead of a pharmaceutical gamble, it uses clinical studied plant-based ingredients like metabolate to help my body naturally boost its own GLP-1 signals. The ones controlling hunger and fullness. No prescription, no needle, no generic lottery. I get fewer cravings, feel fuller faster, and actually keep my results without the metabolic crash. Get 51% off at trimwithx22.com. Every order includes free VIP coaching for life, a 60-day money-back guarantee, and free express shipping with subscriptions. Head to trimwithx22.com now before the offer expires, or just click the link in the description. Without new congressional authorization, notifying Congress afterward per the WPR. Courts have generally deferred to the executive on these matters. Broader U.S. options and realities in 2026 context. So basically, Trump now has placed the focus on Iran. If they start something, they are the aggressor. They are the ones who are pushing all of this. They're the ones who have done it. The U.S. has not. Now, if they do attack the U.S., Trump has every right then to bomb the hell out of Iran. Trump, he put this out on Truth. Iran has taken some shots at unrelated nations with respect to the ship movement, Project Freedom, including a South Korea cargo ship. Perhaps it's time for South Korea to come and join the mission. You think they're going to do that? Most likely not. I think Trump is actually calling them out. We've shot down 7 small boats, or as they like to call them, fast boats. It's all they have left. Other than South Korean ship, there has been, at this moment, no damage going through the strait. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Dan Kane will have a news conference tomorrow morning. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President DJT. So basically, every time Iran now makes a move, they use drones, they move missiles, whatever they have left, they use their speedboats. Trump and team, they're monitoring their movement via the satellites. They're watching where they launch, they're tracking where they move everything. So basically, when it comes time to actually hit them again, because Trump is going to give them a warning, they're going to say, stop what you're doing, or we will retaliate. We will defend the United States. And remember, to defend it, it's not just hitting the small boats, because if they're using drones, they're using missiles, Trump has every right then to destroy the missiles, to destroy the drones, to destroy their small boats. This is why everything is being tracked right now. Trump, he let everyone know how weak Iran is right now. He put this out on Truth. USA, 100 Navy, 100% operational. Air Force, 100% operational. Missile defense, 100% operational. Iran, leader is dead. Navy destroyed, Air Force destroyed, air defense destroyed. It's all destroyed. And you could see that Trump and Bessent, what are they doing? They're putting a lot of pressure on Iran. Basically, in the end, what are they going to do? They're going to break the will of Iran, Obama, Hillary, the deep state, the central bankers. In the end, they will not have any leverage whatsoever. Rapid Response 47 put this out and says, Secretary Scott Bessent on Iran. They really miscalculated when they started bombing their Gulf neighbors in kinetic fashion. And in response, the Gulf neighbors, who I would describe as somewhat permissive in allowing Iranian IRGC money, Iranian regime money into their banking systems, have been very fulsome and come forward and given us the details and allowed us to freeze those assets. So basically, the Iranian money that they had in the Middle Eastern countries' banking system, now Bessent has that information and he can freeze all of that money. So the path that the deep state, Iran proxy army, the central bankers took, it is now failing. Because remember, Trump has taken over control over the flow of money. Very interesting. Now, the other thing that's really interesting is that Saudi Arabia, and World Affairs put this out, has fully restored the East-West oil pipeline, bypassing the Strait of Hormuz and pumping 7 million barrels per day. So what does that mean? Saudi Arabia doesn't need the Strait of Hormuz. The UAE doesn't need the Strait of Hormuz. So basically, the ships now can sail to other locations, and there's no more centralized Strait of Hormuz. Why do you think the deep state, the central bankers, are actually attacking those pipelines? Think about it. They're attacking those pipelines because it disrupts the entire central bank system. It disrupts the cheap energy flowing to China. It disrupts their fear control. Trump is decentralizing the entire world's energy. And he's in the process of breaking the deep state Iran's will. Because as they keep putting pressure on Iran proxy armies, on the IRGC, and they feel the pressure, and their country's being destroyed, their money is drying up, the money that they transferred out of the country is frozen, they can't move, they can't win, they can't use any weapons, they have nothing left. Sooner or later, they will fold. They always do. Because again, remember, they're taking instructions from the deep state players when they realize, and I'm talking about the Iranian proxy army, when they realize that the deep state is no longer in power. Obama is no longer in power. Hillary Clinton is no longer in power. The central bank is no longer in power, and they can't do anything to help them. This is when they break. And they're starting to realize this. What weapons do they have left? Their speedboats? Trump let everyone know they hit like 7 of them. And it's going to be very easy to hit the rest. They want to make a move? Let them. You think they're going to be able to use their drones? Because if they try to hit something else, all of a sudden you're going to see those drones where they took off, where they're being built or wherever they are or whatever they have left, they're going to be destroyed instantaneously. Because remember, once they launch, once they move things, Trump and team, they know exactly where they are. So in the end, Iran, the deep state, the central bankers, they have no leverage whatsoever. They're doomed right now. Just like all the Ds who are trying to put out the message that Trump should be assassinated. And once again, you could see that all these people who are making these threats, they're going to be arrested. And think about it. There was a Pennsylvania Democrat who was a Senate candidate. He made a threat against John Fetterman's 13-year-old daughter and President Trump. Right Angle News Network put this out and says a Pennsylvania Democrat Senate candidate, Raymond Chandler, has been arrested after leaving multiple voicemails threatening to kill Senator John Fetterman's 13-year-old daughter and President Trump. This is who they are. And you know what's very interesting? If you start to look at all these people, it's always the same thing. They have shirts that say, be kind, that, hey, we accept anyone. Actually, this individual behind him says, be kind. He has a little banner up there. But this individual made threats. It's always the same thing. So basically, these people are fake. Actually, I think Matt Von Swal explains, leftists will literally go to rallies and hold love thy neighbor signs. But when I go to their protests in a MAGA hat, I get called a fascist and a Nazi and get cursed at. It's all fake. They are obsessed with the appearance of looking good, not doing good. And it shows. And that is absolutely true. But you have to remember, most of these people, they're part of the system. They're part of the deep state system. They're part of Antifa. They're part of their entire system. And yes, those people, the other people that are going along with this, they've been brainwashed from the very, very beginning. And what happens to cult members when you challenge them on certain things? They get angry, they get pissed off, they become violent. That is what you're seeing every time you go to these things. I'm not talking about Antifa. They're just crazy because they're being paid to do all of this. I'm talking about the brainwashed people. When you challenge them, when you try to break their programming, this is when it clicks in, and this is when they become angry, they become frustrated, and they lash out. And actually, the deep state players, they count on this. This is exactly what they want. Actually, I don't know if you remember this. If you go back to the 70s, remember when parents had to rescue their children from cult members, and they brought them back, they rescued them, and they tried to deprogram them? They become very angry. They become very pissed off. They become violent because, again, you're trying to break their programming. Now, the deep state players, they know this, and they're counting on their anger. They've trained the people to do this. That's what this was all about. And you can see that this is all part of their system. Now, the other thing that we can see is Trump, he's calling out Hakeem Jeffries and Van Jones. He put this out on Truth. He says, Hakeem Jeffries, a low IQ individual, said our Supreme Court is illegitimate. After saying such a thing, isn't he subject to impeachment? I got impeached for a perfect phone call. Where are the Republicans? Why not get it started? They'll be doing this to me, President DJT. Then he has some words for Van Jones. He says, when a devastated, he was crying like a baby, Van Jones of CNN came to me with a group of African-American leaders he had dead in getting criminal justice reform approved in Congress. Van Jones and these black reps had been unsuccessfully fighting to get the reform for many years. He was just wasting everyone's time. Needed 5 conservative senators. There was no chance or even hope for a win. I like some of the people he was with, agreed with what they were saying, and quickly rounded up the votes needed to get criminal justice reform approved. It was not easy. Nobody else, including Obama, who tried to for years, could have done this. Now I watch this guy, Van Jones, every chance he gets, calling me a dictator and far worse. He should be ashamed of himself, President DJT. And again, when you start to look at this, you could see that these people, they always use Trump and they always turn on him in the end. And you could see this with influencers. You could see this with politicians. You could see it across the board. This is why sometimes Trump likes to step back and he likes to see the board very, very clearly and see who's on his side, who's not on his side. And he's done this multiple times because, again, how else do you judge someone? Yes, they'll lie right to your face. They'll tell you everything you want to hear. They'll be buddy with you until that precious moment where they turn on you. So sometimes you need to see the board and you need to see very clearly who's with you and who's against you. And I think the people of this country are starting to recognize this now. They're starting to see that there are people that have been on Trump's side for a little while, and then all of a sudden they decided they were going to turn. Actually, they were always going to turn. They were just using Trump for the ride. That's what we've been witnessing this entire time. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is that we could see that the deep state players, they are down now to the magistrate judges trying to stop Trump. Kyle Cheney put this out and said, Magistrate Judge Faroqui wants to stick with tomorrow's hearing for Cole Allen, saying he has grave concerns about this seemingly unprompted decision to put Allen in solitary for days. Hans responded to this and said, these magistrates aren't judges. Their job was to assist district judges, not to exercise independent judicial power. But now they are exercise significant power with zero democratic legitimacy, just like that magistrate who approved the Mar-a-Lago raid. So basically, the deep state players, they're now using the magistrates to try to stop Trump. And they don't have authority to do this whatsoever. Absolutely incredible. But you know what else is incredible? It looks like the deep state players, they are now pushing a hit job on Trump, on his family, because now they're trying to make everyone believe that they're making a lot of money off this system and they're doing exactly what Obama, Biden, and the rest did. But here it's a little different because Trump actually has a family business. Obama, Biden, and the rest of the politicians don't. Politics Video Channel put this out and said, it was just revealed that Jared Kushner received $2 billion from Saudi Arabia for nothing. His firm has returned zero profits to investors so far. Alex Brushwitz says, more lies from a foreign account designed to undermine the United States. No one gave Jared or Affinity any money. Some of the world's savviest investors made the strategic decision to invest in them, and objective third-party reports already confirm successful returns thus far. According to Axios, Jared has delivered a 36% IRR. This should receive a community note. Absolutely. Then we have Melanie Dorigo. I am old enough to remember when Fox News threw tantrums and Republicans called for endless hearings when Joe Biden received a $40,000 loan repayment check from his brother. Trump has made over $4 billion from various grifts and shady deals from just his second term. Shipwreck Crew says, here's the difference. Trump is a family-owned business that has been a family-owned business for 60-plus years. It had a multi-billion-dollar valuation before Donald Trump took office. It is currently run by the other family members. Biden had no family-owned business, and it had no value before he took office. Yet family members made millions expressly trading access to influence and concealed everything they did through cutouts and offshore banking accounts. Bill Clinton had a pretty much zero personal financial wealth when he ran for president. Today, he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Same with Barack Obama. Yes, being president creates money-making opportunities. But again, these people made their money where they didn't have any other type of business, so they made money off the system. Trump has a family business. The family's running it. Big, big difference. So once again, how did Bill Clinton, Obama, Biden make millions upon millions of dollars if they have no business? Think about it for a second. Then ask yourself, how did Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters, Adam Schiff, Elizabeth Warren, and all the rest, how did they make millions upon millions of dollars? Do you know many people that are making $190,000 a year that became multimillionaires? What, they just had incredible investments? It's just interesting that these people in Congress, where they have no business experience, they have no businesses that they're running, that they're just such incredible investors that they can make not 1 million, but tens or $20 million. We know how they're doing it. We all know how they're doing it. Can someone say insider trading? Can someone say kickbacks? Can someone say money laundering? Yeah, that's how they do it. It's all part of their system. And this is what Trump and team are exposing. And think about it. Think about the Southern Poverty Law Center. Because again, this is one of the organizations that they use for protection. Patrick McKenzie put this out and said, a word to the wise, don't invent a fictitious entity and attempt to open a bank account for it. The laws for bank fraud are drafted broadly. But if you must, then don't do it while arguing for an expansion of the Bank Secrecy Act regime because the existing BSA regime already orders your bank to inform on you. But if you must, then don't do it while engaging in organized pressure campaign against firms with strong record-keeping culture and an institutional desire to please government. But if you must, don't brag about your pressure campaign in podcasts, letters to donors, sworn statements to Congress, and press releases. But if you must, don't do all this while being a nonpartisan 501c3 charity. But if you must, don't even cause to be written a demand to interfere with a PAC's fundraising. But if you must, don't recruit many other nonpartisan charities to co-sign that demand. But if you must, don't host that demand on a WordPress site. But if you must, best not get indicted for bank fraud ever, because people who read bank fraud indictments probably do forensics for sheer love of the game. They might access a WordPress site and make some calls. Very, very interesting. Hans responded to this and says, this is a very long thread, but it's a very good and absolutely devastating on the Southern Poverty Law Center. The article exposes a self-constructed ecosystem where the SPLC crown themselves the speech police and the final arbiters of financial survival, deciding who can have a bank account or even basic web infrastructure. This is lawfare in its most naked form. There is zero oversight and no accountability, just a self-appointed enforcement arm operating outside any democratic constraint. What you're left with is a rogue ideological operation running roughshod over people's rights while claiming to defend them. And this is what the deep state players have used as protection. And what do they need the protection from? They needed protection from everyone that was investigating their money system. That is the fraud that we're seeing across the country. Remember, it's not just in Minneapolis. It's across the country. Every city, every state. Charlie's Voice Rising put this out and said, $540,000 a month in EBT from tiny ghost stores with barely any inventory. That's what federal prosecutors say they uncovered in a $7 million snap fraud case in Boston. 2 Haitian nationals are now charged, and the numbers are wild. If you notice, they always use the illegals to run their fraud system because, again, they don't care about the front men or women. They don't care if they're arrested, and it only looks like they're involved. But actually, this goes much, much deeper. Joe Lane says, it's not just Boston. It's happening all across the country. The Democrats set up this welfare scam system to rob the American people and funnel taxpayer money right back into their pockets. The Republicans were complicit. They knew this was happening. But nobody was attempting to stop it until Trump. Trump is the first president in our lifetime who has made it his mission to protect the American people's money. Money equals power. Trump is giving the power back to the people. I'll say it again. The entire $38 trillion in government debt is all fraud. Trump isn't going to make the people pay back a dime of it. And yes, if you look at Amendment 14, Section 4, if the money is used for a rebellion, it's null and void. If you're fighting a rebellion, it's null and void. So what has been happening all these years? We've been witnessing a rebellion. Remember, this was created back during the Civil War. But you can see everywhere you look, all you see is their money system. And it's being exposed every single day. And I do believe that FBI Director Kash Patel, he's going to be exposing a lot more. He put this out and said, nationwide sweeping fraud takedown continues. Another 764 and NVE op, more voter fraud arrests, illegal gambling takedown in Indiana, and more. Another huge week for the FBI and not slowing down whatsoever. Then he put this out. After just 14 months, we've delivered a generational overhaul at the FBI. cut the bureaucracy, crushed unnecessary approvals, moved over 1,500 agents and intelligence analysts out of D.C. and into the field offices where the mission belongs, and already saved more than $300 million by shuttering wasteful contracts. We're using AI for the first time across the Bureau entire enterprise to stay ahead of threats and restoring the Bureau's focus on protecting the American people. Think about what he just said. They moved the agents from D.C. Remember, they centralized everything in D.C. because their mission was not to go after criminals across the country. Their mission was to protect the criminal syndicate, period, the end, that's it. That's what they were in place for. And every step of the way, they tried to stop Trump. As soon as he came down the escalator, the deep state players went into action, and they put everything into place to actually remove the elected president of the United States. And this was his first term. Now it's coming back to haunt them. Paul Sperry put this out and said, newly classified intel docs reveal Eric Ciaramella staffed dozens of calls between Vice President Biden and Ukraine officials between 2015 and 2017, providing Biden both background info and talking points for use during the high-level talks. He also joined Biden on Air Force Two for trips to Kiev. Still unknown is how many of these contacts concern Burisma and Hunter Biden. U.S. official Ciaramella's close contacts with Biden and Ukrainian leaders make his whistleblowing on Trump over Biden and Ukraine that much more of a conflict of interest. Then he put this out. Declassified intel records under review reveal Ciaramella personally briefed President Obama, the mastermind of the grand conspiracy to take out Trump on Russia-related matters on at least a half a dozen occasions inside the Oval Office. Think about that for a second. Awaken Outlaw says, it's true. If you can't see where this is going, you either take your mail on the shady side of the bell curve or are willfully ignorant. We are seeing revelation after revelation daily at this point that only prove the existence of a seditious conspiracy perpetrated against Trump, including while president, therefore making an attempted coup d'etat of the United States. And that is absolutely true. And once again, you could see that this information is being brought out into the public realm. More and more of this information is going to be brought out because the people have to understand who the players are. And yes, in the end, Trump will go after these main characters. But before that, he's going to shut down everything he possibly can before we go after these people. Because once again, he's making sure that no harm comes to the people. Because again, he's working against violent people. Smart people, but violent. He said it before. And think about it. If he was going to protect the elections, do you truly want to give the deep state players time to counter what you're putting into place? Because remember, the Save America Act, there are certain things in there that the states will not be able to do. And it would give the deep state players time to counter all of it. So who is stopping all of this? Well, it goes back to Thune. Now, what's very interesting about all this, Trump really doesn't say that many bad things about Thune. It seems like he's actually kind of working with Thune, which is very interesting. So leader John Thune put this out and said, honored to welcome home the men and women of the 114th Fighter Wing at Joe Foss Field in Sioux Falls today. Proud of the Lobos and grateful for their service. Awaken Outlaw responded to this and said, read the replies to anything Thune posts. They're as consistently brutal as you may imagine, given that he's the one standing in the way of passing the Save America Act. This would be the easiest win, and he'd be a hero instead of a zero. Yet, he acts as though public conservative opinion doesn't matter. This means he's either deep state controlled, rhino, or he's playing the role of a bad cop. Popular opinion is mostly settled on him being the former, but many of us believe the latter is more likely, especially given the gravity of the moment. So think about it. The House passed the Save America Act. There is no time limit on when the Senate has to pass it. So basically, what if this was set up this way? Let me just read what Trump put out on Truth. We cannot allow there to be an election that is conducted unconstitutionally simply for the convenience of the state legislators. If they have to vote twice, so be it. We should demand that the state legislature do what the Supreme Court says must be done. That is more important than administrative convenience. The byproduct is that the Republicans will receive more than 20 House seats in the upcoming midterms. President DJT. So the Supreme Court has ruled that, hey, listen, forget about the gerrymandering. Let's put everything into place. And now you can go ahead and you can basically rework your maps. Trump keeps pushing the Save America Act. What happens if Trump and Thune, they're waiting for the right moment to pass it? What happens if they're waiting right before the elections to make it law? This would give the deep state player no time to try to counter this. Then on top of that, all of a sudden, the investigation for Fulton County, Georgia comes out. The investigation out in Maricopa County in Arizona comes out. And Trump shows the world that we have a national security problem. Now, we already have a law, which is the Save America Act. It was put into place. The deep state players can't really counter it right now. And then he uses that law to piggyback the executive order that he puts into place to make sure that we have voter ID, one-day voting, paper ballots. What is the deep state players going to do at this point? They really can't do that much. They can't counter the Save America Act. The states won't be able to fight against the Save America Act because, again, it was implemented too late. It's law, but Trump piggybacked on that with an executive order. Now, in the Save America Act, a lot of the states couldn't do a lot of the things that needs to be done in the law. It's probably going to take another year. But since it's law, the executive order goes along with it. What happens if they're waiting? What happens if this is by design to basically shut down the deep state players? Isn't that interesting? Trump knows that the midterms are probably the most important elections that we'll ever have right now. These midterms right here, because this is either going to allow his plan to move forward or it's going to allow the deep state players to take back control. And how do they take back control? Even if they just win the House and they don't win the Senate, nothing gets done. If they win the Senate, but not the House, nothing gets done. If they win both, they impeach Trump. But if we, the people, win, we take control of the House and Senate, which means Trump can move very, very quickly with the second part of his plan, which means he can go after the central bank system. He can go after the deep state players. He can undo everything that they put into place. He can create new laws, not him himself, but Congress can create laws very, very quickly because we will have control over the House and Senate. I do believe this is exactly what Trump is doing. And now he has the deep state players trapped exactly where he wants them. Why? Because the Patriots are in control. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.